Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
The only thing that Trump and Biden didn't do last night was climb to the top rope and jump on each other's neck. Old Gomer used to say, Shazam! Woo! Good morning, everybody. Here comes Kate Smith, and God bless America. Followed by a Patriot with our Pledge of Allegiance. Come on, Patriots, I miss you. Come on. And a good morning to you on this Wednesday, the last day of September, the 30th. My goodness sakes, I'm Zeb Bell, Zeb at the Ranch, and of course with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you with a very safe, clean environment and the best in tires. And also Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's go to the phone line and have our Pledge of Allegiance. Come on, Patriot.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My friend, thank you for calling. We'll look forward to hearing from you a little bit later on. Thank you very much. Job well done. Thank you, Patriot. And right now, let's take a look at our weather forecast. And I'll tell you what, yesterday was phenomenal. What a nice day, and it's going to be like that, I think, again today. We'll check it out. K&R Rental with Roger and the crew at 256 South, 600 west of Hayburn. Right there on the Burley-Paul Highway. You can't miss them. And they've got the best rental of tools and equipment anywhere, anytime, and what a selection. They've got everything for you for both long and short-term rental. If you're not sure what you need, call Roger, talk to him. They'll get you all set up. 678-3122, K&R Rental. And right now, here's Gina with the forecast.
Fall-like temperatures as we are into the final day of September. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are expecting mostly sunny skies for today, high of about 79, just a slight breeze out of the west. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 41. Tomorrow, sunny skies, high of 80. Expecting an overnight low of 43 by Friday. Sun's still going to shine, high of 78 with an overnight low of 42. As we enter into the weekend, looks like sunny skies, highs are going to be in the mid to upper 80s, lows in the low 40s. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
Oh, that's worth another Shazam. Oh, my goodness. Weather forecast brought to you by K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 west of Hayburn, right there on the Burley-Paul Highway. These are really good people serving you. Contact them. Talk to them about more information you need about tools and equipment. Roger and the gang at K&R Rental, 678-3122. Real quick, I want to remind you, too, about our friends over to Ramsey Heating and Electric. Good morning, Ramsey's. These are the finest, nicest folks, and they've been in business now almost 7 decades. Wow. I mean, think about it. 7 decades of the best of providing all your heating, cooling, and electrical needs. My. They're located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, and they're open 7:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. And if you haven't had your heating system checked, you'd better, because right around the corner there, peak, there it is, colder weather coming in, and you better be ready for it. Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley, 678-0459. Caller, good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Zeb. Good morning to you and the sweetest person you ever married.
The only person I've ever married. Yes, she is a sweet, sweet lady. What can I do for you this morning, Keith?
Well, that debate last night, the one zinger, they could have just shut the whole thing down and Trump would have won. And that is when he said, I have done more in 47 months than you did in 47 years. And I thought that is so true.
Yeah, it was,
think about it.
well, I'll just tell you, I'm going to spend most of the hour talking about that debate. I thought it was a different debate, if it even was a debate. Both candidates left a lot to be desired. I'm talking about both of them, and both did bring up good points. However, Biden went out first into the mud pile and started calling Trump names. First of all with a clown, and then he kept saying, shut up, man. Very, very unpresidential, very unprofessional, and it was something from the get-go that I looked at Biden and I thought, you jackass, and that's exactly what I thought.
Well, you know what it kind of reminded me of? Is two billy goats in the barnyard butting at each other. And they just keep doing that until one of them falls down.
Well, I will say this. The paper this morning had a front page story about the debate last night. And literally, if you get a chance to read it and then see what I mean, it was written by two people with the Associated Press. And basically, it was a condemnation of Trump and a kind of a legitimizing of what Trump or what Biden had said. And it made the story seem like, oh, that big bully Trump, whereas Biden started the name-calling. Biden wouldn't answer questions. Biden said he would refuse to answer certain questions, especially about packing the court. And I lost any and all respect for Biden, but I want to be fair. I think that President Trump should have handled himself a little bit better last night.
Yes, I do too. And as a final note, I think Chris Wallace did a pretty good job of hiding his Democratic tendencies.
Well, and there I'm going to disagree with you. There were times, and I had my watch, and I was watching the clock, and there were many instances to where the question was asked of Trump and he would answer, and then all of a sudden Wallace would cut him off, or Biden would make a remark, and then Wallace would go to Biden. And the time frames, and I'm not saying that I did a professional job of timekeeping, but I am telling you that I thought it leaned much more in favor with Biden and Wallace than it did with Trump and Wallace.
I think you're absolutely right. But I think years ago, before Mike Wallace died, he probably made Chris promise that he'd never become a Republican.
Well, I didn't see party politics really coming into it, or platform party politics. I didn't see that last night with Wallace. What I did see, though, is a man that lost control of the debate after he said good evening. And I mean that. He did not control the debate. I think, and I mean this when I say this, there should have been a kill switch on both microphones, and they should have been turned off, and then Wallace should have said, all right, gentlemen, this debate is on national television, and we're going to conduct it as a debate. I will not turn your mics on if you act in this manner any further, and if you go running over each other, I will cut the person's mic off. It's got to be tough.
Yeah, that's true. But the one thing that really hurt Biden last night is I am not going to answer that.
Yeah, that was
the dumbest thing he could ever do.
I will not argue that point.
You can dance around it.
I will absolutely agree with you that when he said I won't answer that question, that just absolutely took the air out of a lot of people's balloons. Keith, I got to run. Thank you so much for your call. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right, caller number 2, I'll be there in a minute. Don't go away. I want to remind everybody about Dino's Septic Service. Oh, they are the best, I'm telling you. Backhoe services, water and sewer lines installed, sewer and sink drain lines cleaned, septic tanks pumped. You don't want to do that kind of stuff. You don't have time and you don't want to stand out there. Let them. They are so big, so good at what they do, and they've got all the latest equipment. Absolutely, Dino's Septic Service, covering a wide swath of all of southern Idaho, let me tell you. Numbers to call, 436-6526 or 678-1638, and in Twin, 735-8281. Fast, fair, friendly service, I know, because they've worked for us. Dino's Septic Service. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, sir.
My friend.
Yeah, that was Chris Wallace was trying to herd cats last night.
He forgot the bag.
He did too. He forgot the cat treats to calm him down. But no, they both acted childish.
Uh-huh.
The Biden kept calling him a liar and calling him
a clown.
names.
He called him a clown on 3 different occasions.
Oh yes. Yeah, and then when Biden was asked about packing the Supreme Court, he would not answer that.
Right there. I'm going to interrupt you. And I've got feedback on the line, Sean, please. Right there, that solidified the end of the debate for me. That, along with Biden not saying the words, "I support law enforcement."
Yeah, and Antifa is an idea.
Oh, my gosh, I about fell out of my lazy boy.
Exactly. They want President Trump to denounce white supremacy, but they didn't ask Biden if he would denounce Antifa and Black Lives Matter.
Let me get involved here. You know, Black Lives Matter, going into restaurants and spitting in people's food and tipping their chairs and tables upside down, harassing people, demanding they raise their fist in honor of Black Lives Matter. Antifa beating up reporters like the one that happened in Portland and just absolutely creating hospital bills for these people. Don't give me the garbage Democrats, and I mean this when I say it. Don't give me the garbage Democrats that Antifa is just a thought.
Exactly. And I don't understand, when you want somebody to support you, you block highways where people can go nowhere.
Yeah.
You go into restaurants and spit in their food and interrupt their dinners, and that's how to get people to support you?
I am very, very concerned this morning, and I want you to respond to this. I said yesterday before the debates that I thought that most news agencies would come out and say, "Oh, Biden did a tremendous job," or "the big bully Trump against Biden," and that's proven in that front page story on the Times News this morning. But, you know, when you look at it logistically, Biden was hiding behind a smokescreen of not saying what really needed to be answered, whether it was about the economy, whether it was about COVID-19. All he did was saying, well, if I was president, we wouldn't have had all that loss of life. That is absolutely a childish, stupid, insane statement to say. Would you agree? And then not answering questions about Antifa and not answering anything about law enforcement. I mean, the man absolutely dug a hole, didn't know when to quit digging, and he's still working at it this morning.
Exactly. I mean, you just, without answering that, you just alienated a lot of people. A lot of people that were on the fence that want law and order. A lot of people are on the fence on where they'd vote and don't like Antifa doing what they're doing in the streets. And the way you said that, he just turned a bunch of people off.
Let me tell you what I think happened last night. Then I think the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, I think the Nancy Pelosi's, I think the Chuck E. Schumers are all sitting there and they're sweating this morning because they're furious because Biden said last night, quote, I am the head of the Democratic Party.
Yes. And he would not make a stand on anything.
That's right.
So if he's the head of the party, then why doesn't he say the way it is? When he signed that deal with Bernie Sanders,
Yep.
on the Green New Deal and all the socialist programs, but yet he wouldn't say he did last night. So Biden is just, he's like a carp out of water.
And his gills are floundering. I got to run, Doug.
Flip-flopping.
I agree. Give me a little spiel and we'll wrap her up.
All righty. But one thing I wanted to touch on, too, was when they talked about a transition of power.
Yeah.
And President Trump's comeback on that was fantastic. His comeback was, there has never been a transition of power to him. They've been going after him for 4 years on fake allegations, which now just come out that Hillary Clinton started this.
Yeah, you know, and unfortunately, I think you're going to agree with me on this, that comment will be shaded over and erased by the news media because it's something they don't want the general public to think about, and they want the public to ignore. The first 3 years of this man's presidency was just like you said. It was nothing more than people trying to disrupt and create complete disorder and chaos, and the man never had a fair chance.
Yes, and they've been trying to brand him as an illegitimate president from the time he won.
That's right.
So it's, and the chickens are going to come home and roost. I hope that Barr and Durham get that report out before the election, but they say it's too political, and I think that is wrong. I think we need to know what happened in 2016 so we can make a good choice in 27.
Let me tell you something about that. I called a dear friend of mine back in Washington, D.C. yesterday about that report, and I'm just really concerned that we'll ever, and I mean this, I'm concerned that we'll ever get to the bottom of that report, because the inner sanctum of Washington and the deep state may have their claws into the investigators in that report.
I think you got a point there, because the reason they don't try to clean up the corruption in Washington, D.C. is because the Republicans and Democrats are afraid they're both going to be exposed.
You got it. I'm worried about that report. I'm worried, and I'm not trying to imitate or emulate anything that Tucker Carlson said, because I've said it on the program earlier than Carlson did, that I just fear that report will not come out in its entirety, if it comes out at all.
Yes, and a better moderator for last night would have been Tucker Carlson.
There's no question. There's no question. I mean, you're 100% spot on. I got to run. I'm late, really late.
Hey, everybody, let's do what we can for our senior centers. Let's go eat there, and you can leave with a full tummy and a full heart.
There you go. Thank you. Hey, the Bennett Boys Auction Service have got a ripping good sale this Saturday, October 3rd at 11 o'clock, located in Twin Falls at 739 Eastland Avenue. Look for the auction signs, lunch by the Cook Shack. They've got all kinds of really special interest items. I mean, lots and lots of beautiful quality, high-quality women's clothing, and they've got all kinds of beautiful chest of drawers and shop tools and furniture, household items, sewing materials, antique collectibles, all of this and more at this Saturday, October 3rd sale at Fred and Joan Robinette Estate Sale at 739 Eastland Avenue in Twin Falls, managed by the Bennett Boys Auction Service. No sale too big, no sale too small. The Bennett Boys, yep, they sell them all. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, I liked it last night when Donald Trump said to Mike Wallace, I got to debate you two.
Yeah.
2-on-1. Yeah. He didn't let him get away with what they did to Romney.
Would you agree that Mike Wallace was like the proverbial duck out of water? He didn't have the personality to take control of that. There are much better interviewers. And again, Sean, the feedback on the line, please. And he lost it after the first 2 minutes, and I still maintain they should have warned the debaters that they had a kill switch on their microphone, and they should have used it. What do you think about that, or not?
Well, no, I agree with that. That should have happened, before they ever started debating.
Yeah.
Have a kill switch.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I agree. And I like your opinion on that, too. Thank you very much for your call. I appreciate it. Thank you. There's so many notes I took last night. I wished I could write in shorthand, but I can't. Biden refused to say the words law enforcement, and Donald Trump pointed that out. And no law enforcement agencies have really come out, and I don't know of any, and I've looked through a lot of the information, really come out and supported Biden. And then Biden had the audacity, and it was a quick comment, and a lot of people didn't follow up on it, but I wrote it down. Biden came out then and blamed Trump, not for the protesters, but he blamed Trump for all the riots. And I thought, wow, right there, Wallace should have jumped in and tried to get much more information out of Biden when he made that accusation. Zip. Crickets. Nothing. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. What did you think of the debate? Who, honestly, did you think won the debate, if there was one? And what about the next debate? Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley. Oh, there's no debate here. I mean, they've got great food. Absolutely excellent food. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, desserts, anytime, all the time. Nice people serving you. And, of course, the menu will knock your Tony Lamas off. It's absolutely excellent. Stop in and enjoy the food at America's Diner, Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley. Super nice people. All right, it's your turn. Give us a jingle, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I will say this, and I'm going to be gratuitous somewhat to Joe Biden. He did better than I thought. Yes, Joe got muddled, really muddled, on certain occasions. But he did take the 90 minutes. But, again, he was aided and abetted on numerous times with Wallace basically kind of bailing him out and throwing him a life preserver. Not so that it was so obvious, but it was very subtle. And I thought sometimes that Chris Wallace was biased and very protective of Biden. And I did think that he was more lenient with the stopwatch and time than he was with President Trump. Caller, good morning. Do you agree with me or disagree with me? You're on the air. Good morning.
Sometimes.
Okay. Whoop-de-doo.
No, really, what you're saying is I agree with. But the thing I wanted to bring out is Trump has had all of these rallies with huge crowds out in the open air.
Yep.
And I haven't heard any fallback on the fact that these people all come down with coronavirus.
No, I haven't heard anything like that either, and it's interesting that you bring that aspect up right now. As of this morning, Joe Biden has jumped, that might not be a good word, but he has boarded a train and is going around to a couple of states on a train tour. He's finally leaving the basement, and he's going to take a little train tour. Now, one would surmise that if he gets crowds at all, of more than 25 people. Are they going to be outside? Yes. They're going to probably be standing near the back end of the train where they're going to set up a little podium, etc. And perhaps Biden will say things that they'll all yell, scream, and holler. And I'm going to be watching closely all these people that are going to attend his train tour stops and see how it compares with the numbers that Trump gets every single time he has a rally.
The problem is we're not giving Trump enough of the microphone. He gets shut off every time he tries to do something. His accomplishments that he's done in his 47 months are there It's on display for people to see.
Well,
Can't they see it?
yeah, I know, Keith, but you know as well as I do that we're living in strange, weird, very biased times. And you're witnessing a part of history that I hoped and wished we'd never have seen in our longer years, where we're a little gray and longer in the tooth, because the left is making a last-ditch effort. And if you don't agree with me on this, go ahead and tell me. But honestly, I think the left is making a last-ditch effort with this election to absolutely twist the tide and turn the strings to have socialism enter this country and take over. If they lose, it's going to be down the drain with these people.
You know, the one last comment I want to make is the fact that if the Democrats don't win, why don't Biden promise them we're not going to cause any more trouble?
Yeah.
No, he's saying you're going to be really in for it if you don't let us win.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a you're doggoned if you do and doggoned if you don't, but you better lean our way or we're going to really cause you a lot of heartache. I agree with you. Keith, thank you so much for your call. Thank you. God bless.
You bet, bye.
Sophie's Chatterbox. Every Monday we give away a dozen cookies to Sophie's Chatterbox right there on the square in Rupert. Oh, what a restaurant. Oh, what a bakery. As a matter of fact, I ordered a couple pies from them yesterday. My, you're going to love the food. And if you win the cookies, by golly, you're going to be one of many people that are really happy. Sophie's Chatterbox, 530 East Street in Rupert. Nice folks. All right, calls are welcome and appreciated at 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. There was something that was said last night, and I hope you heard this if you managed to stay for the entirety of the debate. My wife, I God love her, she held on to her attention for maybe 20 minutes. She was gone. She said, I can't understand what's going on, these two Nimrods and everything. Anyway, but there was something said last night that I did not understand at all, that Joe Biden reiterated. He kept saying, well, President Trump is hurting people's feelings. What? President Trump is hurting people's feelings. Well, the last time I looked, adults are involved in politics. Adults vote for politicians. And adults realize the issues of importance. But the way Biden said that, he's hurting people's feelings. Really? I mean, come on, isn't it time America started putting back on their big boy pants and stopped worrying? Honest, I mean this. Stopped worrying about whether somebody's feelings are hurt. We've got a lot of things to do with our national debt. We've got a lot of things to do with health care. We've got a lot of things to do with COVID-19, bringing back our economy and keeping it growing and prospering. We've got a lot of work to do, and we're going to be concerned, oh, poor baby, I'm going to cry. Somebody hurt Johnny's feelings. Really? You know, a long time ago, a gentleman, and I use that term loosely, said to me, well, you don't want to be combative on your talk show. You just want to be kind of the sounding board and let everybody just kind of state their opinion. And I thought, oh, good, that show will last about 3 hours. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you an honest opinion. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to put salt and pepper on it or anything else. I'm going to tell you exactly the way the story is. And if your feelings are hurt, I'll send you a box of tissues. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I want to give a great big shout out and a thank you. And come on, calls. I mean, a lot of people saw that debate last night. Be honest. Tell me what you thought about it. I'd really like to hear. Maybe you've got a different viewpoint that we're overlooking? I'd like to hear about it. Barry Equipment and Rental Sales, Service, and Parts. 3 locations, 159 West Highway 30 in Burley, 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin, and the Nampa location if you're up in that neck of the woods. They've got all the Bobcats, all the shapes and sizes, all the trenchers, all the scissor lifts. They've got all the Doosan wheel loaders and excavators. You know, really, they've got all the equipment for lifting, digging, pushing, carrying, whatever. I mean, they'll get the job done. And they've got excellent lease rates, and also, if you're buying, great financing programs. So check it out today at Barry Equipment and Rental, Burley, Twin Falls, and Nampa. All right, it's your turn. It's your program. Give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I couldn't believe it when I picked up the newspaper, and then I picked up a lot of the stories from various news services this morning, early at about 4:30, and most of them that lean to the Democratic left are saying, oh, man, that was a slam dunk for Biden. Why, last night he's going to increase his 10-point lead nationally. Now, I got to be honest with you. I cut a wide swath in the community of people that listen to this program, and I cherish their calls, and I cherish having them as my friends or acquaintances. I can honestly relate, of all the calls that I get on my cell phone, by the way, I'll readily give out that number. It's 312-2976. I have yet to find more than 2 people, let's say in the month of September, that have come out and honestly told me that they are supporting Joe Biden for president. 2. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Zeb. You know, I listened to that debate a couple times last night, and it was nothing but a big mess.
Yeah.
I think the narrator interrupted way too many times with his little input of facts that shouldn't have happened. He was supposed to put in no facts at all. And I think a lot of times he was very biased in what he was saying towards Trump. I think Biden, just a big crybaby.
Well,
you know, he was out to protect his opinion, and it was his opinion. None of the other Democrats counted. He was the boss. He run everything, and he was going to run everything.
Yeah.
And that isn't the way our country works.
There you go. When he made that statement that I am the Democratic Party, I am in complete control, I have my own platform ideas, it was as if to say to the left, the Bernie Sanders left and the others that are on the crazy left, hey, listen, boys and girls, don't mess with me, I am in complete control. I think that's going to come back to hurt him.
Zeb, I cannot hear what you're saying.
I'm sorry. We've got a...
It's absolute silence.
I apologize, Jerry.
I'm not real sure what you're saying to me. I can vaguely hear you on my radio, but I've got to turn so low.
Okay.
That it's just, you know, inaudible from where
Well, I apologize, Jerry. We've had some technical and equipment problems that need to be fixed, and that's just the bottom line. And I apologize to you and other listeners for the possible equipment malfunction. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I'm sorry. It's going to be fixed.
Wonderful day, and may the Lord bless you, your whole audience, and your family.
I appreciate it, Jerry. Thank you. God bless you, man. Appreciate it. Some of the low-class left that are on TV, whether it is Don Lemon from CNN or another very low-class woman. I mean, this is a low-class woman. And anybody that's offended by this, your problem, not mine. Dana Bash from CNN On the air last night, and I saw the excerpt of this, she said why the debate was nothing more than a blank show. And I thought, you know, here we are in a nation that our kids are really wondering what's going on in politics, and we need to put more pride in America, and we need to show a more professional image. And then this stupid, low-class, underline those words, I want to emphasize them, low-class woman by the name of Dana Bash from CNN called that a blank show on the air for everyone to hear. Now, some of you might just kind of snicker and tee-hee and say, oh, it's no big deal. Gee, they're going to hear it at school, or they're going to hear it at the candy store, or they're going to hear it over getting a dish of ice cream or whatever. That may be true, but on national television, you've got to have some standards of class. And CNN has no standards of class. And yes, Dana Bash is a low-class woman. There. I feel good for saying that. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. The thing that is going to be really a hot item going into the next presidential debate, of course, is going to be the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett as the Supreme Court nominee. This woman and everybody that's talked to her so far and has interviewed her so far have come away with the absolute, wow, this woman is so sharp. This woman is so gifted. This woman is so knowledgeable. And this woman is so much of a constitutionalist and a patriot. That's kind of the gist of what everybody has had to say about her. And we're going to see, I think, in the next week, 10 days or whatever, as this thing settles down into a potential hearing to get her appointed to the Supreme Court, you are going to see from the left, you are going to see from the Democrats, you are going to see from people like Kamala Harris, the fangs come out and the rabies that they have contracted show forth in those hearings. I think it's going to be dirty. They've already come after her kids. They've come after her family, and I think it's despicable and disgusting what's going to happen. What are your thoughts? Give me a call at 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. The thing that I really I listened to, and I was wondering what in the heck is going on regarding the Supreme Court, is that there have been many people on the left that have said, including Pelosi and some others, well, if we don't get our way, we'll pack the court with more Supreme Court justices. In other words, water it down and create havoc with the most prestigious court of any country in the world. And he wouldn't answer that question last night, he being Biden. I won't answer that question. I won't answer that question. Nope. I refuse to answer that question. Why? And then the lackluster moderator, Chris Wallace, wouldn't push to get an answer. Wow. That was a real focal point in that debate last night. And it should have been to where he said, now look, gentlemen, I'm going to ask this question. Joe Biden, you said you wouldn't answer it. Yes, you will. I want to hear an answer about packing the court. And they let it slip. They let it slide. Give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Don't forget the big grand opening of a new location for Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And I'm going to tell you it's going to be October 7th, next week from 2:30 to 5:30, and it's at the new office. Oh, it's right there on the Minidoka Hospital campus. You can't miss it. I urge you to be there. They're going to have, oh, listen to this, they're going to have hot cocoa and cinnamon rolls, and prizes. And they're going to be celebrating with free cognitive health screenings. Hey, you can't beat that with a stick, so you better get on over there October 7th from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Number to call, 312-0957. Right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Fall-like temperatures as we are into the final day of September. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are expecting mostly sunny skies for today, high of about 79, just a slight breeze out of the west. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 41. Tomorrow, sunny skies, high of 80. Expecting an overnight low of 43 by Friday. Sun's still going to shine, high of 78 with an overnight low of 42. As we enter into the weekend, looks like sunny skies, highs are going to be in the mid to upper 80s, lows in the low 40s. That's a look at your weather for Zebedee.
Oh, it sounds good. Really good. Thank you, Gina. And the weather brought to you by our friends at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Do not let your hearing health slip away. Get a hold of them today. And the number, of course, 312-0957 with a grand opening coming up on their new location next week. Okay. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. You know, I've got so many news stories that have come across my desk this morning, many of which address in an honest and fair fashion how crude and rude Joe Biden was to President Trump. I mean, calling him a clown 3 times, and telling him to shut up, man, and everything else. The crudeness and the rudeness of Biden, I think, was absolutely on display last night. He is a guy with that kind of the Eastern Seaboard attitude that you go on the dance floor with him, your toes are going to get stepped on. And Mike Wallace did nothing to stop it. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Well, it's too bad that Trump had to take on both Mike Wallace and Joe Biden at times, and it was so obvious the bias with Chris Wallace there, and so many times. But I think where Trump really hit the home run was on public safety, because he come out and said, all of these police groups nationwide have endorsed his campaign, and then he asked Biden, name one national organization that's come out and supported your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't say one because there isn't any.
Yeah, he started. Just let me jump in here a little bit, Adrian. Let me jump in. If you notice the body language when Trump looked at Biden and said, "Please name some, Joe," Biden immediately took his eyes off Trump, took his eyes off the camera, took his eyes right down to the podium, and was staring for something that was going to jump out of his paper and give him an answer, and he didn't have anything.
Well, in that case, he really didn't, and that was so very much evident. But Trump's style, he's been attacked for over 4 years, and everybody says, "Oh, he's too brash." Well, I'll tell you, he's a street fighter, and thank God we have him. Nobody else could withstand the constant 24/7 attack on him personally, his family, and his policies.
I agree.
That has made this country, brought us back from. And when Biden said, "Oh, we handed over to Trump a great economy," oh my gosh, what a lie that was! It was one lie after another, and it just involved. Of course, Wallace is not supposed to be a fact checker, but I think he was trying to be a fact checker concerning Trump last night, and that was pretty obvious as well.
Yeah. It was really funny the way you said that, is because when Biden kept saying, "Well, we created a great economy and we handed it over to you," and it's kind of like saying, "Yeah, we created a great economy and then we handed the keys to the car over to you, but we forgot to put any gas in the tank."
No kidding, yeah. Well, I think the growth was like 1% a year, and it never got up to 3%. And unemployment was high, the number of people. Trump missed some really opportunities last night to point out some of those statistics that we've been hearing about the number of unemployed, the number on welfare, and so forth. I was waiting for Trump to really lay that out there, but overall, I think Trump definitely showed that he has to stand, and he's had to stand almost alone without his party behind him.
Yeah.
And he's accomplished a lot for rebuilding our military and in defense and so forth, and he's moved the economy forward. And it's just sad. I would have loved it. When Wallace asked him about the climate change, it's too bad Trump doesn't understand this little amount of carbon dioxide that we need to produce food and oxygen is not killing the planet.
That's right.
But see, you can't come out and say that, because most people think carbon dioxide is killing the planet. I mean, that's what they've been taught in school, and unfortunately he can't come out and say that because, most people have been brainwashed through the propaganda of our education system and the national media. But it's true, and the little amount of carbon dioxide is just not going to...
Well, let me jump in, Adrian. Hang on a second. Hang on. When they started talking about green energy, there is another point of contention that I have against Chris Wallace, because when the costs of the green energy program were brought up and Trump mentioned how much it would cost to implement this, Biden just said, come on, man, you don't know what you're talking about. And right then and there, Chris Wallace should have jumped in and said, well, what are your costs that you're estimating on green energy? Nothing. Crickets. Nothing was said.
Yeah. Well, the green energy deal without tax support, you realize that GE, the windmills are close to your place, just down the road.
Ugliest thing I ever saw.
State and federal tax.
Yep.
It's all taxpayer subsidized.
Yep.
And, of course, Idaho Power has to pay them like 15 cents a kilowatt, whether they produce any energy or not. So without taxpayer subsidies to support solar and wind, they wouldn't exist.
Absolutely.
It's not sustainable when you figure all the input.
I got to run, but I appreciate your call. You're an astute student of what happened last night. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
Want to brag a little bit about our major sponsor, and that's your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you. There is no argument. They are the best at what they do. Absolutely. I mean, all your tires as we go into the fall, and then, I hate to say this word, winter. I know I don't like snow and ice. And, of course, the best in brake service and front-end alignment, shocks and struts, and batteries. I mean, nobody has a wide array of batteries like they do to fit your car, pickup, whatever. Don't get caught with that battery when you turn the key and it goes click, 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 click. No, you stop in and have your battery checked today. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, I mean, they really are service-oriented. With a big smile on their face, they come at a high lope out to your vehicle to see how they can help you. James in Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane and Rupert, Mike in Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, the Twist family, really nice people over in Paul, and, of course, my buddy Trent on Overland in Burley. Nobody better, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Really good folks. All I can say, after all the debacle of the so-called debate last night, is please go to the polls and vote. I am so sick and tired, and I've got about 20 pieces of paper here this morning on my desk about the illegalities and the irregularities of mail-in voting all across the country, and nobody is going to change my change my mind about how dangerous and time-consuming the mail-in balloting would be. I'm never going to stand for it, so let's all go to the polls and vote on November 3rd, please. Coming up next hour, my old buddy, emphasis on the word old, Dave Bego from back in Indianapolis, Indiana. And then one of our favorite guests, we don't get a chance to get him on very much. He's so busy and so much in demand, author Robert Spencer. And he's going to be talking all about the debates and Trump and Biden and some of the worst, some of the best presidents. He's written a book called Rating American Presidents. Caller, good morning. You're on the air. Quickly, I got 1 minute exactly.
It's a quick question. I received a mail-in ballot that I did not request. Now, can I just take that to the polls and fill it out there? I'm going to say... vote at the polls.
I'm going to tell you, yes, you can, and until somebody of higher authority and knowledge tells me I can't. You can take that ballot as long as there's no inkling to push you to vote one way or the other. I would take it to the polls, and I would show the pollsters exactly what's going on with that ballot, and if they say it's legitimate, you fill it out right there and you can drop it off. I respect the way you're doing it.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you. God bless you. What a nice lady. I would think they absolutely can, as long as it meets the requirements and is legitimate. I think absolutely. You take that to the polls, show them, and then vote. That's what I'm going to do, is go to the polls. We'll be back in about 7 minutes. Oh, yeah, here we go. What a beautiful day outside. Holy macaroni. And this is Zeb at the Ranch with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you with a very safe, clean environment and the best in tires. Along with our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Well, right now it's time for that good word from Western Waste Services.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're all at the Georgia struggle. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this free land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at Georgia struggle.
You know, you've got everything lined up for harvest. You got all the workers, you got all the trucks, you got everything, all the harvest equipment. Oh my gosh, you forgot all about the porta potties at the end of the field. Ooh, I'm telling you, big day's work, and every now and then somebody's got to take a break. Make sure you check out all the porta potties at Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. The number to call, 734-6969. Want to also take a minute here to give a great big shout out to Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. I'm telling you what, if you've had an accident, I have many of them, and or a surgery and you're recouping, trying to, and things just aren't going so good, and your muscles and your aching joints, you better get a hold of them today. They can help you at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation get back to being you. Absolutely. Nick Greenwell and all the physical therapists are excellent. Excellent. Number to call, 678-1191. 678-1191. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. You get a hold of them today. One other good word that I want to get into the forum here this morning, and that's, of course, our friends at Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert with my dear friend Joel Heward, his family, and his staff. I mean, they put a lot of time and effort into serving the community, and they have such flexible hours that when there is a passing of a loved one, they are always available to provide the families they serve with the best possible support and comfort. Don't forget, always upholding the highest ethical standards with unquestioned integrity. Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert. Number to call, 436-5636. And Joel Heward also serving you and your family at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. It is Wednesday already, the last Wednesday of September, and here is my excellent old buddy, great author, and really all-around good guy, Dave Bego. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Zev. I'm fine. How are you doing?
Well, I stayed up later than I normally do last night, and I said earlier I wished I could take shorthand because I was just burning the pen up in my hand taking notes, watching the debate. Did you watch the debates?
Yes, I did, and it was a crazy debate, and I wish President Trump would be more professional and you know, put things out there that make Biden really have a tough time to answer and do that, and quit garbling over the top of him all the time.
Well, no, wait a minute. Let's be fair. Because I have excerpts here of the debate on tape, and many, many times Biden also jumped in and garbled up the debate, as you say. But I would concur with you that President Trump, his handlers, they needed to get one of those electric shock collars he used for dogs, and every now and then they needed to zap him and kind of bring him back to reality.
I like it. You know, Devin, you know, I've talked about this many times, that he has to be more professional in things like that, because, you know, people are on the line, and I've talked to some people here in Indianapolis and already since the debate last night, and I've seen other people that, you know, are kind of on the fence whether which way they'd vote in that they're kind of going to maybe step away from Trump because of the way he handled things, and you know, his attitude and even his facial expression at times. I mean, he really looked grumpy at times. And I will have to tell you, I thought Biden looked better than I'd seen him in a long time. But in one article I read this morning in the Wall Street Journal, one guy says, commented, he says, "I wonder what kind of drugs they had Biden on to keep him from, you know, tripping over himself all the time and being more alert than he normally is."
Well, I think some of your friends, and please do not take this as an attack, but some of your friends really need to look at the substance of the debate. Number one, I will agree with you and concur that President Trump could have, should have, and probably will the next time comport himself in a better manner. But let's not forget Joe Biden. He started things off by calling President Trump a clown. He used that term 3 times, tell him to shut up and everything else, and that's not presidential either, so let's be fair.
No, I agree with you 100%, but I think they know, Zeb, that they can get him riled up by doing things like that, and I think that was part of their agenda.
That I agree with, but there were major questions that were brought up in the debate that did not get answered because the moderator, if you want to call him that, Chris Wallace, intervened and side-saddled that event so that Biden wouldn't have to answer.
Yeah, well, you know, Wallace, he's been indicated that he's a Democrat, and so I think that, you know, he used that when he could to help Biden out.
You know, and this is going to sound kind of tacky too, Dave, and Sean, there's a little feedback here on the line, please. But I don't care about Trump's personality. I don't care if he's abrupt. I don't care if he's crude. I don't care. I want to see and legitimize what he does for this country. And he did create the best economy. He did give a real stern word or two to North Korea so that we got that off track. And other countries. You know, I guess I'm not so worried about the personality as I am the substance.
Well, I agree, and I think that he has done all those things, and but you know, the thing is, Zeb, is that the personality helps him bring out what he's achieved and all that, and when he's doing these other things, people tend to get sidetracked by that and not listen to what he's really done, and that's what you have to do. And you know, I had debates with the SEIU And they tried to do the same things to me that, Biden did, and they try to get you all riled up and everything. You just can't let them do it. You have to step back, be professional, and then you have to expose exactly who they are and what they're doing, and they're not telling the truth, and they're being hypocritical about what they say they do and what they actually do.
Okay, so now I'm going to put the ball in your court, and I'm going to have you answer this. Do you think, whether it's Chris Christie that was helping him with the practice for the debates, or some of the other people, do you think they ought to go in there with a real stern and tough attitude of, look, Mr. President, you cannot afford to blow the second debate by losing your temper. You've got to get Biden so that he loses his temper, and that's the bottom line. Somebody's got to grab President Trump by the necktie, the short end, and cinch up on it and tell him what he's doing wrong.
Well, I think that's what the people that work for him need to do, and be honest with him on that. And the thing is, you can get to Biden not by going after him and harassing him and stuff like that, but just by because of his lack of mental his mental problems, by asking him questions and making and doing things that put him in a position, he just gets confused, and then he starts stumbling over himself. And that's what you really need to do with Biden.
Do you think, my dear friend, that there was insurmountable damage done last night to President Trump, that all of a sudden we're looking at maybe a lot of people transitioning to go the other way?
Well, I'm afraid there might be some, Zeb, and but we got a couple of debates to go, and he can fix that if he does it the right way. And even in Indianapolis local show this morning, they had a gal on that says, I was a Trump supporter before, but I think I'm going to go the other way. And and I think it was all because of his attitude, and I think he needs to be professional and present what he's achieved in that, and instead of when Biden was telling him that he was a bad president and he didn't do anything for the economy and all that, and then instead of calling Joe a liar and kind of yelling at him, you got to come out and say, Vice President Joe, that's not the truth. The truth is, and then statistically put the numbers out in front of the American people.
I agree with that to a certain extent, but I think you have to have and maintain a degree of toughness to where you're not going to put the word welcome on your forehead and let Joe Biden clean his shoes off on you. I think you've got to hold him at bay, and he didn't answer questions about law enforcement agencies not supporting him. He didn't answer any questions about possibly packing the court. He didn't answer a lot of questions last night that the people really should have heard from the Democratic left. He didn't answer them.
Oh, I know, and you got to keep putting him in a position to not answer a lot of other questions. And when he says things like Antifa is nothing and stuff like that, that's when you got to step up but professionally step up and expose that what he's saying is not true. And again, he didn't tumble or stumble as much as he normally does. He did a couple times, but you got to put him in a position where he's got to think more deeply, and when he does, that's when he's going to stumble more.
I agree with that, but now back to the bottom line question. Do you think that there was damage created last night by Trump and his volatile temper that cannot be overcome in debate number 2? And the reason I want to say it that way and leave a little pause, already, and I don't like this, I think it's wrong, 27 states are having early voting, and I think that's absolutely ridiculous, but I think it could hurt President Trump.
Well, it could. I mean, people could be putting stuff out early after the first debate that is not good for Trump. And, the second debate coming up, hopefully he'll, achieve more with the people, and he'll be more professional, and we'll get some of that stuff turned around and surpassed.
I am looking forward. I know this sounds weird because in the past I didn't give two hoots and a holler about the vice presidential debates. But in this case with Mike Pence, and in this case with a woman that I just don't like, I don't like to look at her, I don't like to listen to her, I don't like anything about her, Kamala Harris, it might prove very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. And Mike Pence is always very professional. He is a little soft-spoken at times, and he might have to step up a little bit. But he tends to be professional and all that. And I hope that he has the details to expose things and put her on the fence and get her maybe riled up a little bit and show the American people who she really is.
Well, and I look at this debate as, and I don't mean to sound crass against Joe Biden, I look at this debate as Vice President Pence debating possible President Harris.
Well, that's what's you're hearing behind the scenes all over the place, and I think I've mentioned on your show before that my belief is that they're just using Biden as their kind of front pedestal. Actually, get two other lady in behind him. They will run the presidency, and there's been talk that when it's all over, if they win, she'll be the president, and then Hillary Clinton will be right behind her.
I want to talk a little bit about low-class media. And when I say low-class, no class, I've got to talk about CNN. I think they have some of the worst, underline that word, so-called journalists and reporters of any station of any network on the air. And when very low-class woman, Dana Bash, came out last night on the air and called the debates a blank show, how much lower can you get in class than CNN?
It's tough to do. CNN is it's a station that's very well controlled by the left, and they're going to say and do things that most people can't put up with, and it's kind of sad.
I want to ask you a little bit, if in the time remaining, I want to go into professional sports. And we've talked about this numerous times in the past, but tonight the NBA Finals start between the Lakers and the Heat. And in days gone by, I would have been glued to the television set to watch that sporting event. I will not turn it on. I will not show any support or allegiance to an NBA that has banners and logos and uniform logos that say Black Lives Matter, with someone that's an avowed racist like LeBron James. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm with you, Zeb, and a lot of friends of mine who are sports people and that, they have just gotten to the point where they're not watching the NBA or the NFL and Major League Baseball. They're tired of what's going on, and behind the scenes, these guys, they make a lot of money, so they don't care what they say because their union bosses are telling them what they got to say, and the union bosses, they even control the owners and tell them you better do this or that and paint Black Lives Matter on your floor, or we're gonna come after you and hurt your franchise and stuff like that. So. It's really sad what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, let me ask you, you, of course, living in Indianapolis, Indiana, with the Pacers and also the Colts. I was watching just an excerpt of a game the other day because I will not watch in entirety any NFL football. I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm supporting the NFL anymore. But I noticed in the end zone area these great big 6-foot-tall banners that are saying Black Lives Matter. And it seems like the NFL has really tied themselves into this Marxist socialist group, and I got to wonder how come Goodell, of all people, the commissioner of the NFL, doesn't understand, with their viewership down almost 20% from last year, and people not going to even think about buying tickets to go to these games, when is he going to see the light, and hopefully it's not the light inside of a refrigerator?
Well, Zeb, again, he's behind the scenes. He's being attacked by the union bosses and a lot of pressure being put on him and stuff like that. And he just hasn't had the backbone to stand up to it. And he's got to step back and start doing the right things for the American people and for everybody, and not let them bring him down. And it's and this Black Lives Matter. I've told you this before. This was, despite what the media tells you and everything, it was really put together back in the day by Soros and the SEIU and people like that, and it is not a good group. And I don't know if you saw, but just the other day, 2 days ago, Black Lives Matter activist was caught in a money laundering scheme.
Yes.
Where a couple of years ago, this guy accepted more than $430,000 in donations through the Facebook page in July and August, according to an affidavit filed in a federal district court. And despite claiming the group was a nonprofit and they were taking all this money and everything. So, they, like I say, when you deal with these people, and I've dealt with them and I've been through this, you got to not listen to what they say, but what they do.
Absolutely. I did catch a picture that was in a sporting part of the newspaper, another newspaper other than our local newspaper, and it had the Green Bay Packers coach, Matt LaFleur, having his shirt said, "Let's stop racism." I'm going to just say this. You're not going to stop something by flaunting it. And I think the NFL has got to learn they're not a political action agency. They're not a PAC group. They are a professional sports team or group of teams. And I am sick and tired of seeing these people try to stand on a soapbox and try to get people to vote in their direction.
Yep, I agree with you, Zeb. And this is a problem behind the scenes. The far left, which is comprised of the unions and that, they're doing everything they can to bring Trump down in this election, and they're going to continue to do this stuff. And we'll see what falls apart and happens on November 3rd.
I'm worried. I am really, really worried because I think the general public is not studying green energy, the Green New Deal. They are not studying higher taxes. They are not studying what's going to happen to businesses pulling up and leaving our country. They are not studying the issues, and they're just giving lip service to the two candidates standing up there yelling at each other.
That's why, and again, I'll go back to what I've been saying, that's why Trump has to quit standing up there yelling at each other. He has to stand up there and being professional, and put questions out there and information out there that makes the other side just bow their heads and not know how to respond. And those are some of the things I did in my debates with the SEIU, and they just got to the point where they couldn't stand up and answer. They couldn't be honest about things, and I only had 3 debates with them. After the third debate, they would not debate me anymore.
I'll tell you what, I always appreciate your taking the time out of a busy, busy day to come on our program. Dave Bego, author and great businessman and friend. Thank you so much, Dave. Look forward to next week. Appreciate it.
Well, I thank you, and I pray that our president stands up and does the right things and gets reelected.
Amen. Thank you. I'll put a ditto on that. Dave Bego, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget our friends at Denny's Restaurant, America's Diner. Yes, 611 North Overland in Burley, and we're blessed to have another one at 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. Ho, ho, ho. I'm talking delicious, great food. All the different menu choices for not only breakfast, but lunch and dinner and desserts. Oh my. You're going to love your dining experience right there at Denny's Restaurant. Nice people serving you too. So you stop in today. Don't forget 611 North Overland in Burley and also 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. America's Diner, Denny's Restaurant. You stop in and see them today. Want to also give a great big shout out to our friends over to Let's Ride. Hello, Let's Ride. Get your motor running. Vroom, vroom. boom, head for the hills. Well, go to the part of the hills that's not on fire. And be sure and check out all the side-by-sides and the four-wheelers and all the accessories, everything at Let's Ride. 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. When are they open? Thought you'd never ask. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturdays 9 to 2. And like I said, they've got all the accessories you need, and they've got a super service department to keep you running. Those people are really good at Let's Ride. 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World, and it is so true. This is where the fun is sold. In that area, over there in the Rupert area, on the curve as you go into town, don't forget our friends at Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Oh my goodness, Todd and the rest of the staff, they are so courteous, so nice, and so knowledgeable in helping you with the insurance you need for your family and, of course, also your business. You be sure and check it out today. Life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this and more. Very, very devoted to serving you at Cameron and Siemens Insurance. I can tell you, these are great people. Highway 24 in Rupert. The number to call, make an appointment, do it today, 436-4424. That number again, 436-4424. Well, we have had this next gentleman on our program before, and I've got absolutely all the respect in the world for him, the way he discusses various topics. He is the author of a new book, and I really want to find out more about this, Rating America's Presidents, an American First Look at who is best, who is overrated, and who was an absolute disaster. It sounds like a Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Good morning, Robert Spencer. How are you?
Great, Zeb, but I wish I'd thought of that before I put the title on the book.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your book. I'm interested in hearing how you went about putting this all together.
Yeah, it's based exactly on that, what it says in the subtitle. It's an America First Look at the presidents. That is, instead of the criteria that leftist historians usually use, which is favoring people who were in favor of big government, of internationalism, interventionism, all these things that we've been dealing with in the United States for so many decades now. I look at the presidents on the basis of, were they good for America? Were they good for Americans? Did Americans come out better at the end of their term than they were at the beginning? And on that basis, I evaluate all 45.
Let me ask you this question, and I don't want to jump ahead on you, but when you were developing a criteria to judge them, if you will, I would imagine it was really tough going back all the way to the beginning with Washington, was it not?
Well, there are so many things that are constant in American history. It's really quite amazing. For one thing, the deep state. You know, we see the president is opposed by this cabal of conspirators who are shadowy, unaccountable, unelected, and trying to obstruct his agenda in every way they can. And you would think this is a situation unprecedented in American history, and in a certain sense it is, but also there have been other deep states in the past. That is, an oligarchy of people who are not accountable to the voters, are not even chosen by the president, and they're trying to exercise control over the U.S. government. The first one was in the administration of Andrew Jackson, and so this is something that goes back. And right now there's all this controversy over the peaceful transfer of power, with the left raising a lot of hysterical claims about Trump not wanting to leave office, and conservatives countering that the Democrats have never actually accepted the results of the 2016 election, and the coup against Trump is evidence of that. And meanwhile, George Washington is the one who set the precedent for the voluntary stepping aside of the president, which is unusual. If you look at most countries around the world, their histories are mostly of people clinging to power as long as they can until they're killed or forcibly removed or they die in office. And it's a hallmark of the stability of the American system that we have always had presidents renounce power voluntarily, and George Washington is the one who started all that.
I've got to ask you this. As you were delving into all this information, and I would imagine this is a project that when you started this, there may have been days that you said, what in the heck am I doing this for? But what did you learn? What really kind of slapped you in the face?
Well, a lot of it was a lot of the people who are called failures actually turn out to be strong and effective presidents. One of the most notable of that was Warren G. Harding, who is almost universally called a failure, and yet he cut regulations, he lowered taxes, he set aside a lot of the, frankly, unconstitutional provisions that Woodrow Wilson, his predecessor, had put in to suppress the freedom of speech and specifically dissent from our involvement in World War I, and he got America going again. This is why we think back on the time 100 years ago as the Roaring 20s. They were roaring economically, culturally, in all sorts of ways, and Harding is to a tremendous degree responsible for that.
I'm going to throw three names at you. I'm going to play a little game with you here, Robert. And I'm going to throw three names of presidents in the past that I don't think did the best job for the United States of America or their constituents. One might surprise you, but I'm going to start with this one. You already touched on him. Wilson. I did not think very much of him. Number two, I would have thrown into the fray Lyndon Johnson. And number three, a person that I don't like, and I would like to hear what you have to say, Barack Obama.
Yeah, between all three of those, on a scale of 1 to 10, there is 1 point. That is, Johnson gets 1 for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but that's 1 out of 10. And the other two get zeros. So Wilson, of course, was the father of the internationalism that has sapped so much of our resources and has created the situation in which American troops are trying to improve the lot of other people around the world while American infrastructure crumbles and Americans suffer in poverty. This, in a large part, came about because of Woodrow Wilson's justification for getting us into World War I, when he said we're going to make the world safe for democracy. It sounds great, but if you think about it, is it really our responsibility to make sure that every country around the world has good government? If we actually followed that out consistently, we would exhaust our own resources pretty quickly. And Wilson is not only responsible for that, but he desegregated the government offices that President Ulysses Grant had desegregated, and he was an incredible racist who fought against efforts to grant equality of rights to black Americans, and he had scant respect for the Constitution, he was also responsible for another one of these deep state agencies, that is the Federal Reserve, where you have the government funds in private hands, and that has never been something that has worked out well for the United States in the long run. Johnson, of course, is responsible for, even worse, for creating in the war on poverty a permanent underclass. Whenever you pay for something, you're going to get more of it. And so when you pay for people with broken families and pay more money to people who don't work, won't work, than you would if they had jobs, however low-paying or menial the jobs may be. If you make it a greater incentive not to work than to work, then you're going to find people not working. And if you make it more profitable for people not to be responsible and take care of their families, then they're not going to do so. And that is the situation that Johnson created that has caused tremendous devastation, particularly in American cities. And Johnson also, of course, was a terrible racist, despite the fact that he made sure that the Civil Rights Act was passed. As a matter of fact, he did it for quite highly cynical reasons, saying that he was going to get black Americans, which is not the term he used, to vote Democratic for 100 years. And so it was just a cynical ploy to buy votes, essentially.
Wow.
Barack Obama, in the same vein, also made racial problems worse, not better. He was, of course, hailed as the post-racial president. A lot of Americans, even those who didn't support him, were proud that he was able to become president because it showed we were moving beyond racism and that it was definitively a thing of the past. We became one of the only countries in the world, if not the only one, in which a member of a minority that's previously been discriminated against, became the head of state. And yet Barack Obama did nothing but try to make race relations even worse and characterize several notable incidents as incidents of white racism when they were nothing of the kind. There was a black studies professor, Henry Louis Gates, who found himself locked out of his house and was breaking in the window, and somebody saw him and called the police. The police, of course, answered the call. When they got there, Gates did not say, hey, I live here and here's my ID and so on. He was belligerent and nasty to the cops, so he was arrested. This was just all an unfortunate misunderstanding, but there was no racial element in it. Obama, however, said that the police acted stupidly, suggested it was all about racism, and he made a big show of trying to solve the issue by having the policemen and Gates to the White House in what was known as the Beer Summit.
Mm-hmm.
But actually what he had done in the framing of the whole issue was to make it seem as if that police were in a wholesale way targeting black Americans, which is, of course, something that is routinely claimed nowadays, although it is not borne out by arrest records or by the facts in any way. It's a hysterical, false claim that was put forward by Barack Obama.
Wow. We have a caller with a question for you, Robert, so stand by. Caller, quickly, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's a two-part question. I would like to know how many points you give Franklin Roosevelt. And then I want to know your opinion, your thoughts on Andrew Jackson. Thanks.
Go ahead,
Franklin
Robert.
Roosevelt gets also 1 out of 10, like Lyndon Johnson. And the one that he gets is because he was an inspiration to many Americans during World War II, kept us, restored hope to the country in the time of the Great Depression. And so for that, he is to be commended. But that's about all that can be said that's positive about him. He was, of course, a big government socialist, also with scant interest in obeying the Constitution. He's responsible for the massive growth of the federal government and the trampling of constitutional constraints on the growth of the federal government. The federal government today is involved in all kinds of things it has no business being involved in, and that is largely the responsibility of Franklin Roosevelt. He also bungled the handling of World War II in many ways. For one thing, even though he had every reason to believe that the Japanese were going to attack, I'm not saying that he knew about Pearl Harbor in advance. I did not find any evidence of that, but I did find considerable evidence that everybody in Washington knew that the Japanese were aggressive, growing and more aggressive, and were likely to attack us at some point. But on December 7, 1941, the Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor was completely unprotected. And he could have done any number of things to prevent the carnage that took place there. At the end of the war, of course, he handed Yalta. He handed Eastern Europe to Stalin and condemned millions of people to living under tyranny. So you have to say that. Also, his big government expansion and raising of taxes and so on just prolonged the Depression. So you have to acknowledge that both domestically and internationally, he was essentially a disaster, even though he's celebrated as a hero by the left. Andrew Jackson was very much a mixed bag. In one sense, it's very good that he became president, and this is forgotten now, but four of the 6 presidents who preceded Jackson were all from either Massachusetts or Virginia. 2 were from Massachusetts, and they were father and son, and the others were from Virginia. Jackson was, in a sense, the first who was not part of one of those 2 groups. He was a real man of the people, the first populist president, and he, of course, is routinely dismissed and criticized nowadays for the Trail of Tears, the expulsion of the Cherokees from the southeast to Oklahoma. And that is indeed a blot on his record. There's no doubt about that. A lot of people died on the way, and it's in a certain sense collective punishment But this was not, of course, the plan. It was not. A lot of hysterical leftist historians nowadays act as if this was some extermination plan that Jackson implemented. This was nothing of the kind. As a matter of fact, he explained why it should be done in terms of tremendous concern for the Indians and a desire to protect their rights. He pointed out that there were many who did not want to assimilate into American culture, and so there was going to be conflict unless the two groups simply lived apart. That was the idea. Now, of course, later presidents reneged on the idea of giving some territory to the Indians beyond the reservations. Oklahoma was originally supposed to be Indian territory, but that was not Jackson. And it has to be acknowledged that his motives were not evil in this regard. Most of all, and best of all, Jackson defeated the Bank of the United States. The Bank of the United States was the public treasury in private hands. The bank directors were another one of these deep state oligarchies of unelected, unaccountable officials, and they bribed congressmen and senators to do their bidding, and Jackson fought the bank and killed it. And for that, all Americans owe him a debt of gratitude.
I'm almost out of time, and I've got quite a few questions left for you, Robert, and this one is one that I'm having a hard time trying to put into a phrase. But when you look at the racism that was enveloping this country back in the 60s, and I'll use Lyndon Johnson like you used just a little bit ago, and then you go ahead 50, 60, and now 70 years from that point of interest with Johnson, and up until we had the introduction of the coronavirus in this country starting in January, December, whatever it was, we were looking at high cotton with a great economy, and everybody was praising Donald Trump. And then all of a sudden, COVID-19 came into this country with, in my opinion, a resurgence of racism like I've never seen before. Would you concur with that or not?
Yeah, absolutely. But the racism, of course, is the reverse of the racism that has been in the United States in the past, because it's what a lot of people don't even acknowledge could possibly exist is anti-white racism. But when I see a lot of these people, like Washington Post writer Karen Attiah and many others, actually, they speak about white people as in the ways that if you switched it, it would be astonishing, and people would say, what is this, the Ku Klux Klan? What is this, Bull Connor? The way that they speak about white people is even worse in many ways than the way white racists of the past used to speak about black people. And yet this is the cultural mainstream nowadays, and a lot of that is very much due to Barack Obama and his fostering of this false notion that there was some systemic racism in the country, which Joe Biden just repeated again last night in the debate, and that there was that somehow this country is intrinsically or deeply racist.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I can't even imagine. I've been putting together stories, short stories, for a book that I'm writing. But I mean, when you sat down with your computer and your notes and all the different studies that you had to perform, I can't even imagine how you garnered all these facts and all these informative pieces about the various presidents. Tell me, that's amazing to me how you've got this all down and found out everything.
Well, I'll tell you, it's something. This is a book that, and you could say in a certain sense, I've been working on for 50 years, because I was about 7 or 8 years old when I first started to get interested in American history and in the presidents. And some of the books that I used as sources I actually got back then and have kept all these years. So when I sat down to write this book, I had in my mind, to a tremendous degree, already formulated what I wanted to say about each one, and I knew where to find it. It was just a matter of tracking down the specifics and putting it all together.
I'm a little bit more than concerned looking at this election, re-election for Trump on the one side or election for Biden on the other, and our Constitution and our constitutional values. Give us your thoughts, please, about both of these gentlemen.
Well, I don't think that Joe Biden has any regard for the Constitution. He's yet another one of these socialist internationalists. He distanced himself last night from the far left of his party, but he actually contradicted his own written statements in that regard, and statements that are still up on his website, such as the endorsement of the Green New Deal and so on. Trump was right that he would be beholden to that radical left wing, which is increasingly open about its Marxism. Black Lives Matter is an openly Marxist organization, and so on. He would be completely in the pocket of these kinds of groups, and that could be absolutely disastrous for the future of the United States, would destroy the economy, infringe upon our freedoms in numerous ways, particularly our First Amendment and Second Amendment rights. The devastation could be catastrophic, and that's really what we're facing in this election.
Let me ask you one final thought, Robert, in regards to our presidents and their stands on various issues, but the one thing that has to be dominant, did they, the past presidents, leading all the way from Washington up to today, did they really understand and appreciate and know our Constitution?
Oh, sure. That was taken for granted in the past. I mean, you have a few outliers. Woodrow Wilson was extraordinary in that he was a college professor before he became president, and he actually wrote about how it would be good if we had a dictator and didn't have these constitutional restraints on executive power. And he showed when he became president that he really didn't have a whole lot of respect for those constraints. But for the most part, it was taken for granted in past days that the president should put America first, should respect the constitutional restraints, and so on. It's only been in the last few decades that this has been something that has not only been ignored, which some presidents have done in the past, but actively contradicted. And now you have the Democrats essentially lined up, for example, behind the idea that there should be judges who are appointed to the Supreme Court who have no respect for the Constitution at all and want to just twist it to say whatever they needed to say at the moment.
You are fascinating, and I have you in the highest regard. The book is called Rating America's Presidents, an America First look at who is best, who is overrated, and who was an absolute disaster. Robert Spencer. Robert, where can the book be obtained?
It's at Amazon, it's at Barnes & Noble, and if there's still any brick-and-mortar bookstores out there, ask them to order it.
You know, I tell you what, I wish you the very best of success on this book. I've got to get a copy. I've got to read it. It's fascinating to me, and I'm a history buff, and it sounds great. Thank you, Robert Spencer, for being on the program, and I certainly hope you'll come back in the future.
Absolutely. Call me anytime.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Boy, I tell you what, he's his own little Encyclopedia Britannica. I mean, he knows everything about past presidents, what they did, what they should have done, or how they handled various situations. Wow. Robert Spencer in his book called Rating America's Presidents. Fascinating. Right now, I better be fascinated with the weather, and before I run out of time again. And the weather is brought to you by Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. And they've been providing accounting services to the Mini-Cash area for well over 50 years. They know what to do to help you, your family, and your business. That's right. The best of tax return preparation, as I almost choked to death, tax planning, business consulting, retirement planning, financial statement preparation, all of this and so much more as they serve you at offices in Burley and Rupert. Don't forget the professionals. Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Fall-like temperatures as we are into the final day of September. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are expecting mostly sunny skies for today, high of about 79, just a slight breeze out of the west. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 41. Tomorrow, sunny skies, high of 80. Expecting an overnight low of 43 by Friday. Sun's still going to shine, high of 78 with an overnight low of 42. As we enter into the weekend, looks like sunny skies, highs are going to be in the mid to upper 80s, lows in the low 40s. That's look at your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
I'll tell you what, this group, Phillips Oakes, Goodwin, Crane, and Company, they are so knowledgeable and they provide the best of accounting services to you and me, absolutely. And I urge you to work with the professionals, Phillips Oakes, Goodwin, Crane, and Company, with offices at 1710 Overland in Burley and 625th Street in Rupert. Yep, remember the name, Phillips Oakes, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. Wow, what have we got coming up for the rest of the morning? We've got a gentleman, and I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name. I have not talked to him personally. I went through one of his booking agents. Mark Sheeran, I think is his name, and we're going to be talking about the devastating effects that COVID-19 has taken on people with all kinds of substance abuse. And we're going to talk to him at 10:06. And then one of my very favorite guests, Dr. Michael Busler, world-renowned economist, is going to be on at 10:30 this morning, so don't miss that. Want to remind you about some people that know all about electronics and all the devices, and boy, they can sit and talk to you for hours at Patterson's Electronics, 421 East Main in Burley. Yes, sirree, Bobby, Curtis, and Lorena, they've got everything. I mean, from all the cords and the cables to all the home theater systems and the surveillance cameras and the car stereos and speakers, complete sound systems, and all your TVs from Samsung, Sony, Toshiba, LG TVs. You know what? They're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6. Plenty of time for you to get in there and really get to know some people that can help you. Patterson's Electronics, 421 East Main in Burley. And as I said, they're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6. You stop in and see them today, or give them a call at 678-6997. Really good folks. Oh, my. Let's see. Tomorrow, I'm going to be here tomorrow. Yep, I'm going to be here tomorrow on Thursday. And don't forget, we've got the Chamber of Commerce report. We've got, of course, our friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. We've got Cassia County School Days. And I believe we're going to have Superintendent James Shank on our program tomorrow. And David Bossy. Now, if everything goes right, and you know who he is, you've seen him on television a lot on all the different news channels, he is one of the high mucky-mucks of the Trump campaign. He's a senior advisor, and I am going to lay it out to him as to what were the pitfalls or the pratfalls that took place last night during the debate with Biden and Trump. So that's going to be really interesting. David Bossy on tomorrow morning talking about a new book that he has co-authored, and we're going to have that at 10:30 tomorrow. Don't you miss it. Right now, we're going to get ready to send this back over to Sean at our main studios, and we'll be back in about 7 minutes. Don't you go away, Zeb at the Ranch. Okay, here we go. When I hear that music, I'm ready to rock and roll for the last half hour, actually full hour, of Zeb at the Ranch on this Wednesday, September 30th. Glad you're aboard, and we want to give a great big shout-out and thank you to our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you with the best in tires in a safe, clean environment. And let's not forget, too, Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Want to also take some time right here to give you folks a heads up. All seniors, listen to me, a beautiful, beautiful place, Greystone Crossing Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. Brand spanking new. And believe me, providing 3 meals a day plus snacks, housekeeping, and local transportation, all included in the rent. What I would do is suggest to you that you give Matt or Kelly Wiggins a great big call right now and say, hey, we'd love to take a look at that place. All you have to do is call 650-4979. That number again, 650-4979. Greystone Crossing Senior Living. Living with your friends at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. And a big thank you to our other friends that are excellent, and that's 7K Metals, with silver purchases available for you to help you build your own financial security and future. Absolutely, this is a saving opportunity for you and a valued treasure for your loved ones in the future, and I urge you, I really do, to call Lon Hardy at 312-8699 or Sharon at 430-3259. Tell them I told you to call. I'm sold on the idea. We've been involved for about the last 7 or 8 months. 7K Metals. You can create your own security bank through silver purchases sent right to your home. Right now, we are going to go to the phone line, and we have with us the co-founder of Baldwin Research Institute and the St. Jude Retreats, the first residential non-12-step model for drug and alcohol problems in America. Whoa, good morning. And I'm going to say the name, and if I say it wrong, please correct me. Mark Sheeran.
You got it right, Zeb.
Oh, my goodness. First time at the plate, and I hit a home run. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mark, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got involved in this kind of work.
Well, over the last 31 years, I've been researching addiction. I started my career because I had a really horrendous experience in rehab that was very dissatisfying, very ineffective. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this than to be saddled with a disease for the rest of my life. At the time, I was 19 years old, and they told me I was this powerless, hapless victim. And I said, that can't be true. And then I started my research career, and I built a better model. That's a non-disease-based model, because addiction is not a disease, contrary to popular belief.
Let me ask you this, and I have never been addicted to anything, so I'd be the last person in the world to try to offer any kind of advice or anything else. But how does one, and this may sound like a simplistic question, but how does one become addicted to a certain source?
Well, there's two things. There's obviously physical addiction where you have withdrawal, but that's different than what most people think about when they're talking about addiction. Addiction is a preference for a substance, activity, object in your life. It's something that you desire, and it becomes habitual, and you need it, or you feel like you need it for your happiness, for your peace of mind, for your joy, or just to stave off withdrawal. I mean, there can be a whole variety of reasons, but you develop it based on a heavy preference for that situation.
Are we, as an American society, are we more susceptible to addictions today more so than the last 30, 50 years?
Well, because of our belief system, nobody's susceptible to addiction, but our addiction rates have gone up. When they're actually relatively stable until the last 10 years. They've gone up as we've doubled down on this idea that you're powerless. If you believe that you're powerless, if you believe that a drug has power and that you don't have free will, if you believe that, it becomes truth, right? Your beliefs guide your thoughts, and then it becomes a real problem. So in America, because of the paradigm of disease, that mythology, and because we believe in it, it becomes truth, and so we become trapped in it. That's why my book is called The Freedom Model, Escape the Addiction and Recovery Trap. You become trapped in this construct. And so, yeah, in America, we're kind of backwards. We think we're advanced, but we're backwards.
Is our medical society, and I want to say this by prefacing the remark by adding this to it. About 5 years ago, I had some very serious major operations, and after the surgery, they had prescribed some opioid dosages, and a nurse that was in the room walked by my bedside after the doctors had left, and she said, "Mr. Bell, please, please, please consider what you're going to be taking, because it could be very addictive." And I never did start on those opioids, but that's just one instance of where people are becoming so dependent on the drug. Am I right or wrong?
Well, you bring up something that's interesting. Prior to opiate awareness, our rates were lower. So we're teaching people to frame physical dependence as a compulsion. And when you match those two, it becomes very problematic. So we're actually teaching people how to be addicts. For centuries, at the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s, you could get heroin from the Bear Company at your local drugstore, and we didn't have the problems we have today. So it really is a case of how we view it and what we're teaching people. No drug is inherently addictive. It doesn't contain addictiveness like an orange contains vitamin C. It's how we view it. And if you were to go to the hospital and you were never told that, and you became physically addicted to it, and you went home, you'd have 3 days of a flu-like symptom, you'd think you had the flu and you would move on. But if somebody taught you that that was addiction and a compulsion, you might view it as addiction and then continue to use it. You see, so our beliefs and how we view this has a huge role to play in the addiction rate today.
Now, I'm going to say this because I've studied your information sheets, but I would imagine also that because of the introduction of COVID-19 back last winter, December, January, that the fear and the being out of work, the not going to school, and being cooped up in your house 24/7 has created more potential hazards with addiction. Am I right or wrong?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Let's look at opioids. We've seen nationally somewhere between a 38 and 42% increase in overdose rates since the lockdowns over the previous year. Let me just put that in numbers perspective. If you look at COVID-only deaths, meaning there's no underlying issues with the person, there's about 12,000 deaths from COVID only. Okay, no diabetes, no heart disease, no cancers, just COVID only. So we have a clean number of about 12,000 people. And just the additional overdoses with opiates is going to equal to over 20,000. So the lockdowns, the unintended consequences of the lockdowns have been devastating. And we're seeing that there's the National Alliance on Mental Illness Hotline has seen a 65% increase in calls and emails since March. That's a massive increase. The 42% increase in overdose deaths with opiates is the largest increase we've seen maybe ever in a single year. We don't see that in addiction rates. They don't jump up that high that quickly, ever. And booze production nationally is up 27%. Suicide rates are increasing so far at 17%, 22% with adolescents. These are massive numbers. You know, these are tens of thousands of people. And all of this is based on moving the goalpost every time we get close to being free as a society out of lockdown. They move the goalpost, and that hopelessness that people are starting to feel deeply that this is never going to end is what's driving a lot of this.
I can't even imagine. I know that when this COVID-19 became a real problem and our governor in the state of Idaho started making stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, etc., and the lockdown attitude, and my business almost went under. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It almost financially went under. And the stress and the strain and the worry, and God helping me, we got this thing back on solid ground and we're off and running again. But I can't even imagine the stress that people are going through today.
Yeah, and here's the problem with that. In our culture, other cultures don't hold this belief, but in our culture we equate stress with substance use, right? It's a very common idea that if we have these stressors, we will use drugs or drink if we have that sort of proclivity. And so with that belief, the lockdowns have literally, it's causation at this point. These people, you described the stress perfectly, you know, the unknowing, the constant nagging fears economically. That's a huge, massive stressor for people. You know, it's your livelihood. Can you feed your kids? And if you had a proclivity for drinking, it gets really out of control after you have that much fear. And then, but I want to really hone in on this idea of the government constantly moving this. It's a moving target, so it keeps everybody in a state of fear. and compliance. And, you know, you never know which way your life is turning now. And this is unknown territory. It's the first time in America that we've quarantined the healthy. We don't normally quarantine the healthy. We've never done that. So it's sort of a bizarre time. And I don't think in a free society we understand how to deal with that.
You know, you bring up an excellent point. I could really ask you 1,000 questions, and I don't have that kind of time. But, Mark, we're looking at an election process that we're only literally about 39 days away from selecting a re-election of Trump or selecting Biden. And when you look at that case of Joe Biden coming out and saying, well, the only way we're going to combat COVID-19, we may have to have another total shutdown. I mean, right away, I felt a stab in the back when I heard that because my business can't take another total shutdown, and I just wonder about how other people are relating to this.
Yeah, let's just look at the numbers because that's what I do. If you have a death rate that's equal to or less than the flu, which is what we're dealing with, the question really becomes, why would we do that? You know, I realize there's death. I am not denigrating that. I'm not. But as soon as the death rate dropped to flu-like levels, we switched from death rate to new cases. That became the narrative. And one has to wonder at that point why. Now, as a researcher, as a sociologist, these are the things I look at these trends. That's not my forte. You know, medical is not my forte. Mine is addiction. But they coincide, so I was sort of forced to look at this. And I said, geez, this doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for a second lockdown. The death rate just isn't there. And you see Governor DeSantis down in Florida, and he said, you know, we're opening up our state. We're done. You know, this doesn't make sense, and that's sensible.
You know, when you talk about this as far as dependency and whether it's alcohol or whether it's drugs or opioids, whatever, this sounds like a very simplistic question, pardon me for this, but how do we turn this bus around before it goes over a cliff?
Well, I cover that in my book, The Freedom Model for Addictions. First, you have to tell people the truth. And I don't have an answer for the COVID argument because I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. I don't have that answer. But I know that people need to know they're not diseased, they're not hopeless. So even if the COVID is driving you to use more, you need to know that you don't have a disease of addiction. You have a choice. You have a preference. Preferences can change. You can move past this. And also, at being somebody that in my younger years had a suicide, I actually had 2 suicide attempts, I understand what it's like to be hopeless in that regard as well. And please understand that everything is temporary. Even these lockdowns, they are going to end someday. So even if it's a political movement, if that's driving it, I don't know, but it's going to change. Nothing is permanent. And a drug addiction problem doesn't have to be permanent either.
Well, Mark, how do we create, if you will, a better mental health society so we don't have people painted in the corners and they feel so lonesome and so distraught that they'll go to these severe measures?
Well, that's a really complicated question. And at least with the addiction issue, it's why we had to write a 450-page book.
Wow.
Right? There's so much mythology surrounding and misinformation surrounding addiction and the causes of it and the reasons for it that the first thing we need to do is clear out the misinformation, which is what I spent 30 years doing and writing down. So I always go back to the real basics. You don't have a disease and you're not powerless. And just that message, you can watch people turn around and say, oh, I have some control then. Yes, of course you do. You can make a choice. You can change your preferences for drugs and alcohol. So I think that like anything, the key is understanding the research, understanding the truth, and then becoming empowered with knowledge. It's the misinformation that's killing people. It's the idea that there's no way out. And I'm here to tell you there's a book that's written that shows you the way out. So people don't have to be hopeless. They don't.
Let's talk a little bit more about your book, The Freedom Model for Addictions. What is it that you want people to know, study, and understand when they close the last chapter of this book?
That they have absolute control in the direction of their life. That they get to choose whether they're going to be happy, continuing to use heavy, moderating their use, or abstaining completely. That all options are available to them. That kind of shocks people when I say that. But the truth of the matter is human beings do exactly what they want to do. The question is, do you understand all of your options thoroughly? And when people understand all their options thoroughly, they usually make the one that makes the most sense, both health-wise, mental health-wise. But they need that information. So in the final analysis, it's all about understanding the facts and then being able to feel that sense of control over one's life, knowing that they can make choices and change their life, and being totally empowered to do so. That's the takeaway of the book as an aggregate.
Mark, do we have enough people, and again, I'm not sure how to ask this, but do we have enough people in that profession of knowledge that can help people and get rid of the suicidal tendencies and sit and visit with them? I mean, do we have enough people that can help?
Oh, there's definitely enough people. The problem is that we have more treatment today than we've ever had in the history of the world. So for this problem, it's funded to the tune of $37 billion a year just in the United States. This is huge business. It's not the people. That's not the resource that's the problem. The problem is the information is flat out wrong. Telling people they have a disease they don't have, rendering them powerless over a lifeless substance is the problem. And I've said this, and it's a harsh, critical statement, but treatment creates addicts. It doesn't cure them. We got to get away from this idea that you're being treated for a disease that you don't have. And in any other medical profession, it would be illegal to tell somebody they have a disease they don't have. Yet with addicts, that's what we tell people every day, and we convince them of that. And there is no evidence of a brain disease, of any type of disease pathology. It doesn't exist with this problem. So, and people, when you poll them privately, 80% will say, yeah, I know it's not a disease. But publicly, they won't go against the narrative because they don't want to be the guy, saying otherwise. So we know that people haven't really bought in, but the problem is that that's the only model they hear, and eventually you start to believe it, and that's the problem.
Is the book that you've written called The Freedom Model for Addictions, is this a book that people can read, understand, and use it as kind of a step-by-step method or model to get better and more mentally healthy?
Yeah, it's not as much steps as it is. We designed it with the table of contents by topic, by very, very narrow topics. And after doing this for 31 years, and at my retreat, I've helped over 10,000 people, move past their addictions as well. So each topic is very focused. So a person can literally get the book and then go through the table of contents, and there's dozens upon dozens of topics. Is it a disease? How do I deal with depression and addiction, for instance? These type of topics are labeled, and then they can go right to the page and address that issue. So, but it's got just a tremendous amount of research and experience in how to get through these things.
Let me ask you one final thought here, is our dependency and our using substances like whether alcohol or methamphetamines, whatever the case might be, is it geared towards a specific age bracket, or do you see it in all age brackets?
It peaks at 25 to 27, and then the trend line goes down, and it almost is extinguished by 70. In other words, as we get older, whether we're treated or not, we get over the problem. And ironically, you brought up methamphetamine, 99% of methamphetamine users get over their problem within 8 years. And people never know that. They don't hear that. And there's no physical addiction with methamphetamine either. So none whatsoever. So, alcohol, 91% of people treat it or not, will get over the problem. 96% of heroin users will get over the problem, whether treated or not, as they get older. So when we factor in age, we see a natural growing out of the process. If it were a disease, here's something that sort of makes people laugh. If it were a disease, it's the only disease that gets better as you get older.
I'll tell you what, please tell my audience where they can obtain this book, The Freedom Model for Addictions.
That would be at thefreedommodel.org, or if they're in crisis, they can call me at 888-424-2626.
You know, Mark Sheeran, I appreciate your being on the program, and I wish you all the best. God bless you for taking the time to come on the show, and hopefully you'll come back in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Zeb.
You bet. Thank you. I learned a lot right there. And we hear so much on the news about restaurant owners, gym closers, the ordinary citizens just absolutely with their hands to the side of their head, just ready to tear their hair out because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to feed their family. They don't know what they're going to do to get any income. And then they resort, very unfortunately, to the substance abuse, whether it's pill form or alcohol. Really appreciate the name of the book is The Freedom Model for Addictions, Escape the Treatment and Recovery Trap, co-written by Mark Sheeran. So there you go. Let's take a look right now. I've got to tell everybody about Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. Excellent, excellent people serving you, and they know all about the beautification and comfortization of your home at 459 Overland in Burley. They've got all the mattresses for a good night's sleep, all the Simmons Beauty Rest mattresses, and they've got all the window coverings. You're going to be spending a lot more time indoors from now on, and of course they've got all the carpet and all the floor coverings. And with the kids in school, it makes it a lot easier for the installation. And don't forget they've got all the furniture. Whether it's bedroom sets or whether it's dinette sets, your recliners, your sofas, chairs, love seats, oh, the list goes on and on. They have all of this and the best at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More, located at 459 Overland in Burley. You stop in and see those really good folks today. Right now, we're going to take a small break and be back with our next guest in about 3 minutes.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
Thank you much. I want to remind you about the Fred and Joan Robinette Estate Sale. It's going to be this Saturday at 11 o'clock, and it's located in Twin Falls at 739 Eastland Avenue at 11 o'clock this coming Saturday. Look for the auction signs. Bennett Boys Auction Service managing this sale. Special interest items, a lot of shop tools, a lot of lawn and garden items, furniture, appliances, household items. They've got super sewing material and items, all kinds of antiques and collectibles. This is going to be a nice sale. Fred and Joan Robinette Estate Sale this Saturday, 11 o'clock on Eastland Avenue in Twin Falls, managed by the Bennett Boys Auction Service. No sale too big, no sale too small. The Bennett Boys, they sell them all. Right now, I really mean this when I say this man is one of my favorite all-time guests to have on my program. He is a public policy analyst, economics expert, and a professor of economics at Stockton University in New Jersey. Dr. Michael Busler. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Zeb. Thanks for having me. As you know, it's always my pleasure to be here.
Well, I tell you what, after the debate last night, which I think a lot of ground was not plowed up that should have been, and then you hear about our economy and you hear about our economic situation as trying to rebound from COVID-19, and then the possible fear that Biden put in everybody's heart by saying, if I'm elected president and COVID's still around, we're going to have another lockdown. Holy smokes, that must make business owners just cringe.
Yeah, absolutely does. The last shutdown, and in some states, like New Jersey, New York, Illinois, Michigan, California, Oregon, Washington, in those states, they're still not fully opened yet. And as a result of that, small businesses are doing worse than cringing. They're wondering how long this will last and whether they'll be able to survive this and continue in business. This lockdown, it was really kind of a no-win situation. If you lock things down, which the federal government did for a 6-week period, the idea was to flatten the curve and reduce the number of coronavirus cases. However, by locking down, you created a lot of other problems, both economic and eventually health problems. There's people are feeling more anxiety now. There's more depression. Alcohol and drug abuse are up. Even suicide is up. And you just can't keep people who are used to socializing locked up in their houses for a length of time. So it's very difficult to decide, should we shut down or shouldn't we? But at this point, most businesses, and I think most states, should be fully open. Be careful with how you practice your business. You can social distance if necessary and use the masks when needed. So you can open responsibly and safely and reopen so the businesses won't die. The ones that were hurt the most were small businesses in seasonal economies. I happen to live at the New Jersey shore. New Jersey had a very difficult problem with coronavirus, but it was all up in the northern part of the state around New York City. In southern New Jersey, Atlantic City and south, there was very little problem, and yet the governor shut everybody down and continues to have a shutdown. You're only allowed to have your indoor dining and facilities operate at 25% of capacity even today. And by doing that, these seasonal businesses are not going to make it. Their revenue is down probably close to 50% below what it was last year. And these seasonal businesses need the income in the summer to be able to carry them through the winter when many of them completely shut down because there's no business. Even the ones that are open have a very scaled-down operation. So we really need to get everybody opened as quickly and as safely as possible. Otherwise, a lot of these small businesses simply aren't going to make it. We've already seen some large department stores file bankruptcy already. I'm just afraid in the fall we're going to see a lot more small businesses being forced into that situation.
Dr. Bussler, I do not have a tenth of the knowledge that you do about this and economic stories, but I will say this. When you say to these businesses that may be restaurants, well, yeah, you can open, but you can only go for 25% of your capacity. To me, that's like still stabbing a knife in their back, because at 25% capacity, with all the cost of the groceries and the maintenance and your labor costs, you're still going to go broke.
Exactly right. 25% capacity is not enough for these businesses to even break even. Usually a business, probably depending on a number of factors, probably has to do about 75 to 80% of capacity to break even, and then anything above that turns into their profit. But operating at 25% certainly isn't going to do it. Now, entrepreneurs are very creative, and they'll try to figure out things as best they can. A lot of restaurants where I live have convinced the city that they want to shut down part of the street, sometimes the parking area, sometimes on the side of the building, and they shut that down, and they had outdoor dining. That still wasn't enough to carry them through, but they used their ingenuity to try to minimize some of the negative impacts of being shut down. But, you don't need a PhD in economics to figure out that if you're operating at only 25% of capacity, there's no way you're going to be able to cover your costs. And these small businesses don't have deep pockets. It's not like some of the larger chains where they have access to capital much easier. These are small business people. They make a living out of their business. They usually don't have a lot left over after making a living, and here we've really cut the legs out from under them. And as I say, I'm very worried about a flood of bankruptcies going into the end of the year.
Well, let me ask you this question. I was talking to a friend of mine back in New York City. He's a businessman, a very well-known businessman, and he made the statement to me about 8-9 days ago that New York City, the Big Apple, may never, ever come back financially. Is that true?
I certainly don't know, but what he said makes a lot of sense. There's so many businesses there that have shut down, and because the crime rate is going up in New York City, a lot of people who live in New York City are saying, look, I'm paying these exorbitant rents, so I'm buying a property that's an exorbitant price because I enjoy two things. I enjoy going out and taking advantage of what the city has to offer, and I want to be close to where I work. Well, now people are learning to work remotely, and that may have some long-term impacts, so there's no reason to live in New York City anymore in terms of working. And in terms of going out, all the restaurants are shut, or you have to eat outdoors. And in the summer, that wasn't bad, but it's starting to get a little chilly now. And that is a problem. So if people are leaving New York, and if some of these restaurants and small businesses aren't going to open again, I think your friend hit the nail right on the head. I don't know if New York City is ever going to return to what it was before.
Let me ask you this, on the other side of that nickel, are we going to be seeing another problem with all the leaving of business offices and working remotely at home or wherever? What about the real estate market for New York and other large places of business? What are they going to do with all these office spaces?
Yeah, and you're already starting to see that. Vacancy rates for apartments are at historic highs in New York City now. The businesses that have closed their offices and have their employees working remotely, it's a question whether they're going to come back or not. Once they find out, or if they do find out that their employees can operate very efficiently at a remote location, then they're going to say, why are we paying these exorbitant rents to be in New York City to have office space there when the people can work at home and we can save all this money? So you're likely to see a glut of office space on the market that'll drive prices down. You're likely to see a glut of apartments relative to the demand on the market. That'll drive apartment rents down. And you're seeing already people moving out of New York City and into the suburbs. That will tend to drop real estate prices. So the beauty of New York City and everything it had to offer is really being stripped away from it. And your friend makes a real good point. I don't know if the city's ever going to be able to come back from this. And again, you throw in the higher crime and the mayor seemingly not willing to do anything about it. So if people don't feel safe, especially if you have a family and you're worried about your kids going out on just walking on the sidewalk and you're concerned about safety, that's not a place where you want to live. So they need to address the crime problem. They need to get the city opened as soon as possible. I think they've started to allow the restaurants, I think just this week in New York City, to partially open. Mm-hmm. But again, even if you go up to 50% of capacity, that's not going to do it. You can't even break even at that point. So there could be some very negative long-term impacts on cities like New York.
Well, let me get on my soapbox for a minute and say that I think a lot of people that consider themselves to be leaders in the community are dumber than a bar of soap, because this virus is not going to go away. We're going to have to learn with the virus, not the other way around. And when the government stepped in with the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, and under the CARES Act and everything, was this just basically an umbrella for the rain and not really going to do that much?
Well, so the whole stimulus packages, it was a series of packages, were both a good thing and a bad thing. So on the good side, look, the economy shut down from mid-March until the end of April. Shutting down the second half of March dragged down the whole first quarter GDP, which January and February looked like we're going to have a great year. but we shut down for half of March, so GDP in the first quarter declined at a 5% annual rate. Because in April we were completely shut down for the entire month. Now, May and June we started to come back, but because we were shut down completely in April, the economy declined at a more than a 30% annual rate. So the federal government, not wanting that to turn into a very severe, long-lasting recession, passed this, all the stimulus packages, which essentially did three things. One, it gave extra money to virtually every American who filed a tax return last year. Virtually everybody got $1,200. For a family of four, it was $3,400. So when the economy reopened, these people had extra money to spend, and that should, they felt, stimulate the economy. The second thing was some of the people that were unemployed collect unemployment compensation. Typically, that's only a fraction of what they earn. So the government added $600 a week to whatever they were getting from the state. That gave them more money to spend once the economy opened. There's a little bit of a downside to that, because 2/3 of the unemployed people were making more money being unemployed than going back to work, and that's caused some problems for small business because some people just simply don't want to go back to work. The third thing was the payroll protection plan, which lent money to business. Virtually all businesses who applied for it got it, and it would cover your payroll for a 3-month period. If you didn't lay anybody off during that 3-month period, the loan turned into a grant, and that enabled businesses, at least for that 3 months, to stay in business. Well, all of that stimulus went into effect in May. The economy rebounded faster than from any recession that we've ever seen. Now, why do I say that? We don't get growth numbers by month from the government. We only get them by quarters. But we can judge how the economy is growing in any month by looking at how many new jobs were created. Just to give you a little bit of historical perspective, in a normal year, the economy generates 200 to 300 jobs a month. The record was 1.6 million jobs in 1 month, that during the Reagan administration. In the month of May, we created 2.8 million jobs, nearly doubling the previous record. That indicates the economy is growing quickly and coming back. In the month of June, we created 4.6 million jobs, almost doubling the record from May, again indicating a robust recovery. July, 1.8 million. August, 1.4 million. So 4 months in a row, we're above a million jobs in a month. That indicates the economy is rebounding. So the first stimulus package did what it was supposed to do, and the economy is on its way to a V-shaped recovery. The recovery seems to be flattening. The V seems to be flattening a little bit, and that's why there's pressure on our elected leaders to come up with a second stimulus package.
Yeah, but here's the caveat that I want you to talk about quickly. I've got about 3 minutes left. When you start talking about a V-shaped recovery or a flattening out of that V-shaped recovery, and people are now starting to see maybe a light at the end of the tunnel that's not a train coming at them head on, but then you hear the presidential candidate Joe Biden say specifically and adamantly that he's going to raise everybody's taxes. That's going to kill the whole growth program, is it not?
Exactly, Will. That's the worst thing to do during a recovery, is to raise taxes. You want to try to keep the tax rates as low as possible so that when people earn income, they get to keep as much as they can. That gives them more money to go out and spend, and that helps to stimulate the economy and bring the recession to an end and pick up the recovery. You want to eventually get into an expansionary phase. Once we recover and get back to where we were before, which I think we're probably less than a year away from that. There's a whole lot of variables in there. But then we can start into an expansionary phase. Low tax rates will encourage business to invest more because they'll get to keep more, encourage people to work more because, again, they'll get to keep more of what they've done, and both of those will lead to growth in the economy, stimulating the economy, and let us get back to where we were before as quickly as possible. Raising taxes now is the worst possible thing he can do.
Well, you use the word variables, and I'm going to sum it up and say in my particular position, there's only one variable to concern myself with, and that's the election. If it goes the wrong way, our economy could go on the high dive and hit a pool that doesn't have any water in it.
Yeah, I agree with you. This election is very important, not just for the short-term economy, but by raising the tax rates. He wants to raise the corporate tax rate back up to 28% from 21%. That means people will be paying a third more in taxes than they were paying last year. That reduces investment capital for business, tends to slow economic growth. He's going to reverse the Trump tax cuts on individuals. That means we're all going to be paying more taxes, giving us less money to spend, tending to slow economic growth. It's very important. Even if people don't like President Trump, he's a bully and he says all these bad things and he's a bad person, I don't like him. Even if that's the case, you still have to vote for Trump's policies. It's far better to have a person you don't like as president but has good policies rather than, like we had with Jimmy Carter, a person everybody liked whose policies were absolutely terrible and led to a stagflation and high inflation and high unemployment and problems we had to deal with. When you get into that voting booth, even if you don't like Trump personally, you have to vote for his policies that they'll benefit the entire country, not just the economy, but also in national defense.
I wish I had more time, and to the caller that's waiting to come on the air, I'm flat out of time. I'm dictated to by the clock. Dr. Michael Busler, a dear friend of this program, economics expert and professor at Stockton University in New Jersey. All I can say is thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you, Zeb. It's always my pleasure to be here. I look forward to doing it again.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. And to the caller, I am sorry I flat ran out of time. Want to remind you about a great place to go to eat, and that's Edith's Cafe. Oh, my goodness, at 144 East Highway 81 in Burley, right across from the golf course. And I don't care what you order on the menu, it's going to be good. From the burgers all the way to the steaks, and they do catering. I'm telling you, they've got a huge dining room, and they are ready to serve you. They're open Tuesday through Thursday, 11 to 8, Fridays and Saturdays, 11 to 9. Do yourself a favor and call your friends and neighbors and your relatives. Everybody enjoy a great, great meal at Edith's Cafe, 144 East Highway 81 in Burley. Right now, we're going to go to the weather forecast, and the weather brought to you by our friends at Scarro's Meats. Don Scarrow and the rest of the outfit at 331 North Road, Jerome. Oh, yes, it's true. They've got all the delicious meats, all the marinated pork ribs. They've got all the tri-tips. They've got all the hams, all the bacons. Oh, so many flavors of bacon. Sausages, bratwurst, you name it. It's all there for you at Scarro's Meats. Number to call, 324-7657, or you can go to their website, scarrowsmeats.com. We'll tell you more right after Gina has the weather.
Fall-like temperatures as we are into the final day of September. Here's a look at your weather forecast. We are expecting mostly sunny skies for today, high of about 79, just a slight breeze out of the west. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 41. Tomorrow, sunny skies, high of 80, expecting an overnight low of 43. By Friday, sun's still going to shine, high of 78 with an overnight low of 42. As we enter into the weekend, looks like sunny skies, highs are going to be in the mid to upper 80s, lows in the low 40s. That's a look at your weather for Zebra Duran.
Thank you, Gina. Always a great weather forecast. She does a wonderful job, and so do the folks at Scarro's Meats. 331 North Road, Jerome. Number to call, 324-7657. Yep, at Scarro's Meats, they are changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time. Want to give a great big shout-out and thank you to my major sponsor, and that's, of course, our friends and your friends at your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Tire Centers, all 7 locations. And don't forget, during harvest time, on the farm, on the dairy, on the ranch, I'm telling you, they've got those great big service trucks that can be there, Johnny on the spot, to get you back and running again. They've got all the tires, all the tread designs, and for all vehicles. And I urge you to stop in at any one of the 7 locations to help you. And don't forget, too, the best in brake service with highly trained brake technicians, front-end alignment, shocks and struts, and batteries. I mean, they know it all and can help you. Please remember James and Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane and Rupert, Mike and Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, the Twist family in Paul, and my buddy Trent on Overland in Burley. Yep, the best, your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers. Tomorrow, big day. We've got, again, I want to mention that we are supposed to be having David Bossie, the senior advisor for the Trump campaign, will be on our program tomorrow at 10:30. I hope all goes well and we get him on the air, so don't forget that's coming up tomorrow on the show. Until tomorrow, we always say the way things were, the way things ought to be, and the 4 words that mean the most to me: in God we trust. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:06 on Zeb at the Ranch.